These are like TD Bank chairs.
I'll be honest with you, the other organizers will know that about half of the messages I sent to them were about, have we secured the chairs yet? Have the chairs been moved into the room yet? I haven't seen the chairs. I have a lot of chair anxiety because we need our TD Bank experience. All right. I'm just going to ask one question, and then we'll open up to a couple more, and then we're going to call it an evening. I've organized these for a few years now, and I've attended this festival for a number of years before that. I gave a keynote myself a few years ago, and there's always a strange synergy that happens between the authors, no matter how disparate they may seem. The year I did it, it was all poets doing keynotes, so everyone just talked about death and wept the whole time. But I will admit, when I looked at the two of you on paper, I thought this is about as polar opposite as we could get for two people to bring together. But really, the more I thought of it, I was struck by how both of you balance humor and then a really intense or high seriousness together in your work. Maybe that's rage, maybe that's anger, maybe principle, I don't know. But there's something really fierce and strong mixed in with humor and lightness in your work. And despite that, one of you would be associated with comedy and the other would be associated with drama or seriousness, I think. And I'm curious how each of you see yourselves. Do you see yourself as a serious person? Do you aspire to be a serious person? What does that mean, the idea of being one? I'm just curious about that.
Oh, I'll jump in.
I'll let Evelyn do that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you feel that there is some humor in my work. It took me a long time to get there, and I know, like, you have always had that sort of wry. Even just talking to you, Rob, you have that wry kind of sarcastic quality, and I think when you start writing when you're young, you are intensely serious, right? I mean, there's not a lot of nuance. There's just, particularly if you've had, difficult experiences that you're mining. I mean, it's very blatant and not, humor seems too light for it, but actually, as more time goes on, humor is actually a very hard one and difficult thing to do, right? And yet immensely powerful. So I'm definitely finding, as I get older, yes, there's definitely more sarcasm, right? And I'm enjoying that, because when you have a certain voice, to be able over time to realize that your voice can do other things as well too, that it has other layers and other capacities, is immensely satisfying.
Yeah, so I think there's a kinship. And I don't want to be presumptuous in claiming it, but and you'll remember from the lectures, like, that I feel that, I mean, jokes in particular, but comedy in general, there's a kinship with poetry as a non-prosaic use of language, there's an immediacy to it. There's a kind of what Terry Eagleton would call a kind of shortening of the circuit between sign and signifier. Like, I think that poetry and comedy share that, and so I feel that they're, without collapsing their differences or erasing their differences, I feel like there is that kinship. I also think there is so much good, funny poetry, and so much of my favorite artwork is that kind of stuff that is funny, and then it's also terrifying, or it's funny and it's also heartbreaking. It's funny, it's also I've been having a migraine day, and so Evelyn and I have been kind of talking about pain management a little bit. And I think that comedy, without being a narcotic, I do think it is a story that I always tell. I come from a family where that's been through a lot and is very funny, and where pain and comedy are very tightly braided together. And I consider as a kind of comedy baptism this joke that my mother told right after I was born. And this is obviously a joke that I don't remember, but that has been told to me. And I think even the fact that it has been told to me shows that it's this important piece of like family lore. But my mom, who died when I was 10 and got sick when I was 5. And so we would not always get to be around each other. And when we were around each other, she was, not always had a ton of energy and stuff like that. And we lost her way too early. And but I primarily remember her as funny. And when I was born, she had an episiotomy. And after the doctor was giving her stitches, she said to the doctor, she said, "I might as well stitch it all the way up, doc. Nobody's getting back in there." And I always just feel like I think of that joke, which is about pain, but is also just a genuinely funny joke. I think of that as like a little miniature baptism into the kind of family philosophy.
So I think of comedy, yes, it's pleasurable and it goes to the heart of something. But I wonder for both of you, because I think of both of you as kind of like funny people, like comedy can also be very much a shield, right? It can kind of deflect, right? Yeah. And because it's so enjoyable, people eat up the comedy, but then they forget, like they haven't actually gotten to have a real conversation in a sense with you. And so is that like in either of your lives, like, do your partners ever feel as if you use comedy as to push them away?
That's very funny it's very funny that you say that, because I distinctly remember at one point when my daughter was arriving onto the scene, at one point in the delivery, I made a joke to my wife, and she just turned to me very calmly and very lovingly, but also very decisively, and she said, "And that's the last joke." So I kind of feel like, just like anything that can help with pain, you can use it to numb out, right? And so, talking about some of the themes in my talk and the timeline, I remember when everyone was excited, when Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart kind of came onto the scene, and this was the dark days of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, and they were using humor to get people to think about politics and talk about politics. But then the problem is that got metabolized, and then it just led to a kind of numb nihilism that I think you kind of, if you're not willing to own that at least part of that leads you to Trump, then you're not being honest. So I think like anything, if it's not held in a kind of balance, it hurts instead of helping.
There's also the Colbert effect of right-wingers could watch his show and believe that it was genuine and that he was in agreement with them, and left-wingers would watch it and see something totally different.
Right.
Which is always the danger in comedy, that maybe it's not a danger, maybe it's an opportunity. I don't know how you would think about that, but that ability for it to be malleable, to mean different things. You were talking about that with poems, how you can, someone might interpret a poem differently because it's a poem. And I think humor has similar trickinesses to it, where an audience is going to be able to do what they are going to do with it. We have time for a couple questions. I'm going to open it up to everyone. A reminder that a question is the thing that has that squiggly line and the dot at the end. They do not end with periods or exclamation marks, and they do end. They don't go on for a very, very, very long time and just kind of trail off. So if anyone has a question, we would love to hear some questions. Yeah, go for it. And there are microphones in the ceiling, so just shout up to the heavens and we will hear you.
Cool. My question is directed at Evelyn. Just a few moments ago, you were talking about kind of the self-seriousness of young writers and kind of mining from a set of experiences for inspiration. And I guess I wanted to ask about that a little bit further. What would be your advice to writers looking to maybe find a voice or creative inspiration beyond that kind of core set of experiences that we're kind of constantly mining from?
Interesting. Well, I mean, this sounds like a kind of pedestrian answer, but reading, right? I mean, reading widely, saturating yourself with words and seeing what can be done with words, what different people can do with words. We all have our genres or authors or voices I used to love reading anthologies, for example, when I was first starting out, because that would be a way to get like the little sample plate, right? The appetizer plate and then I would find the voices that, okay, this is somebody I want to read their entire backlog. But yeah, to be very, sort of non-judgmental initially, I think, in your reading, just to take in as many different styles, because then in all of that, you hopefully pull out the best, right? And manage to, infuse some of that into your own writing. Yeah. I think, some writers, when they start out, they don't know if they have a voice, or they worry about what is my voice or something, but for better or worse, I never had that kind of anxiety. And again, maybe it's because I knew from such a young age I had this determination, and it wasn't a matter of, it never felt like a choice, like I'm going to go and get my MFA. It was never like that. It was just, my life is going to be reading and writing. And I mean, honestly, sometimes I think, maybe a life spent reading books is, that's a pretty good life, especially once you start meeting people and you realize, okay, it's better just to stay at home and read books, right? It's true. Can you maybe jump in and ask?
I thought that was great. I mean,
You did it.
I remember George Bowering said that at some point when he was a kid, he realized, if you read, you get to lead two full lives, like an inside and an outside life. So why would you not do that?
Nice.
But to me, that's that's the exact right question to be asking. So it's a good sign that that's what you wanted to ask, I think.
Yeah.
One more question. Yeah, go for it, Jay.
This is probably the best question to ask, but I was wondering what books you guys have found most influential to you and your writing.
Influential books.
This is where our minds go blank.
Yeah,
right?
so I've got that ADHD object permanence, and so if I'm not looking at it, I can't think of it, and so it is genuinely hard for me to. I remember a book that I as an undergrad I just loved was Class Notes by Adolph Reed. He is a Black Marxist scholar from the States who writes very academic stuff, but then Class Notes was a collection of his magazine writing, the essays, and they were much kind of punchier and fun and really and we kind of passed around a copy of that book like a samizdat. Somebody kind of accidentally took it from a library sort of thing, and we just kind of we sort of read and oh no, I'm confusing that with another book that we did the same. But that book, but Robin D.G. Kelly, Yo Mama's Dysfunctional, which is another book by an academic, but that's sort of non-academic writing. Tariq Ali was a major, both the fiction of the Islam quintet, but then also the nonfiction. I'm thinking back to my early 20s. Those were the really kind of books that I was just really excited about.
Well, you actually came up with titles. I mean, I cannot do such a thing. God, I read so many books that I didn't fully understand, because we start, when you're young, but you're gorging on the language, right? And that's what you're responding to. So I remember as a 17-year-old whose boyfriend at that time was a married 47-year-old psychiatrist, he gave me a subscription to The New Yorker. And you know what? I mean, that was one of the positive things out of that relationship, because I mean, again, a lot of The New Yorker went right over my head, but that was where I discovered John Updike. And that was where I thought, again, when you're not going to school, you can learn, you could get a degree just from reading The New Yorker.
Yeah. And
I would force myself to read, so there'd be an article about economics, and I'd have to read it very, very slowly because I didn't understand. This was not natural to me. But it would be so well written, right, that I would read it. And so, I mean, we're lucky that we have so many different ways of coming to an education through books, through journals.
And I worked as a reviewer, as a book reviewer and a theater reviewer and a movie reviewer. And I approached it with exactly that thought, this is where I'll learn how to write these things. Because I worked for the student newspaper with Dr. Roxborough Smith, and you get some experience at your student press, and then you kind of go, and in those days there were newspapers, so this is
and there was somewhere to go after
right,
that.
But get work writing, and then you get an education because you have to engage with other people's stuff and a whole slew of other stuff that you don't have any selection bias to, because it's assigned to you, it's given to you.
Yeah. I'm conscious of the time. We're going to have to end here. The conversations can, I hope, continue over the rest of the evening and into tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to have 2 panels in this room where we're going to be hearing brand new work from a range of writers. And we're also going to have a bunch of workshops, podcast recordings throughout the day. If you didn't get a brochure, I assume you looked at the website at least once before you ended up here, so you already know all the things I'm saying. But please do come back tomorrow and keep this energy going. This has been an incredible way to start the festival. I am so grateful to both of you for making the time to come out here and join us. Can we give them one last big round of applause? A reminder to everyone that books are for sale at the back, and at some point, if these two are able to work their way to the back, we will have them signing books out there, or you can corner them on the way up and delay that process, have them sign them on the way up. But please get books, get them to sign a copy of the book before you leave. It's a wonderful memento to carry with you so that you can actually remember a book when you're asked what your favorite books are. You'll have a visual reminder of it. All right, thank you, everybody. We'll hopefully see you tomorrow.